people think of formal language learning, especially the grammatical aspect, they start thinking of rules. But to be effective learners, it would benefit us much more to look at patterns rather than rules. What's the difference? Here is a small collection of abstract shapes. What I'd like you to do is study them for a few moments and then see if you can memorise them enough to be able to reproduce them. Pause this video clip and have a go. Okay, how did you get on? Well, if you achieved the task, you are a genius. If you didn't quite get all the details correct, don't beat yourself up. If you have a photographic memory and did manage the task successfully, how long do you think you could hold these separate images in your long-term memory? I'm betting you didn't even try to do it. Most people would find it impossible and give up on it within a few seconds. What would be the point? Now see these shapes linked up into an overall pattern. If I asked you to reproduce the whole pattern, would you find it easier to remember? I'm betting you would. You'd probably have to study it for a while, but you could make some sense of it and be able to rationalise a way of remembering it. You might even enjoy the challenge. Now I'd like you to look at another pattern where there is a section missing. Based on the premise that there is a regular, consistent pattern, how easily can you fill in or generate the missing bit? I don't think you had any difficulty, did you? What are the implications of this little activity? See how many observations you can come up with, and if you're watching this with anybody else, share your thoughts. You see, if you think about it, we are programmed to perceive and respond to patterns. That's how we operate in every area of our lives. It's mostly unconscious, but whether it's a question of national culture, local accent, political thinking, corporate organisation, social organisation, educational system, moral values, or personal behaviour, it's all about familiar patterns. Habits, both good and bad, are firmly embedded patterns. It's pattern and routine that makes life predictable and manageable. Patterns are memorable. We can remember patterns. We don't easily deal with exceptions. Our natural tendency is to regularise rather than create exceptions. How easy would it be to recognise, remember or repeat a tune if it didn't follow some kind of pattern? To be successful in understanding and learning maths, you need to be able to understand patterns. So why should an area as fundamental to life as language not be based on pattern? Well, of course, it is. So in that case, why do we associate language learning with rules and exceptions to rules? Well, consider this. If a rule has lots of exceptions, it's not really a rule, is it? Rules are imposed, but language learning is organic and systemic. Language is not about rules, it's about patterns. More than that, language patterns represent underlying systems. Languages are systems of communication, that's what they are. We're born with the ability to learn language. All of us. A baby, on its entry into the world, has no idea what environment it has come into or what culture or language it is going to be exposed to. All by itself, it has to make sense of its surroundings. If you watch little children at play, they seem to be programmed to perceive patterns and establish categories. young learners spend their early years sorting colours, sorting objects, sorting shapes and sorting concepts into sets. I well remember my own children going through this process. On one particular occasion, I was busily chatting with my mother in her garden while she was potting up some seedlings. My 18-month-old twin daughters were busily playing with the little black and terracotta-coloured plastic pots, some of which were square and the others round. Suddenly, my mother drew my attention to what they were doing, because as soon as one twin had sorted the pots into round and square sets, the other would reorganise them into black and terracotta sets. What they couldn't do was just do nothing. It was as if they felt impelled to organise and make sense of their immediate environment. There had to be a recognisable system of organisation. Well, if tiny children can manage, albeit by trial and error, to make sense of everything around them, including every aspect of the immediate language, why do we assume that as we get older, we no longer have this facility? From a learning point of view, when we try to divide a language up into digestible bits, we obliterate its main components, we obliterate its patterns, we obscure its categories and systems. And this is what happens in conventional grammar books. We give abstract labels to the deconstructed individual bits. We analyse them one by one. We describe them and create examples to illustrate and explain how they are used. But these explanations become fossilised into rules which must be obeyed. And when we come across authentic examples which do not fit the rules or mirror the examples, we describe them as exceptions. What the global approach does is look at the variety of contexts in which a pattern occurs and identify its generic function across the whole range. This is in sharp contrast to the conventional approach, where many grammar rules are drawn up to explain a restricted context and then illustrated and justified by the creation of similar examples. And contexts which do not illustrate these rules are carefully avoided. Children learn through their bodies, their limbs, their fingers, their eyes, their mouths and their ears, as well as through their minds, not to mention their emotions. This kind of whole person learning is the model on which the global approach is based. It enables you to see the overall patterns of a language and to internalise them in the way that we did as children, not simply through our intellect, but through our senses as well. Taking a global approach makes language learning much more rapid, much simpler, and much more fun. If you'd like some examples of what I mean by language patterns, go to theglobalapproach.co.uk and I'll meet you there.